And today we are looking at improving conversion through strategic pipeline management, which is a mouthful, I know, and it is a little bit, it doesn't sound that exciting, but actually, as you know, if you've read my email, it's actually a really important opportunity for you to get more growth. So often people leave a lot of money on the table with existing pipeline and, and people who approach them and leads that they found and relationships they started to build because they just give up too soon. And apparently, if Harvard said 9%, they must be right. It must be correct. So that's quite a lot, and that's quite a lot of growth. And when I read that, I thought actually that's worth a seminar. Really, it's I think it's quite important for us to look at that. So this really is why we are here today, to see if we can improve pipeline management with a bit of thought around it. So what are we going to cover today? So we look at reviewing your pipeline effectively. So what sort of things can you do to look at it and get a fresh idea and fresh thoughts from the names on that list? What else can you do if you haven't been able to convert them so far? So a lot of people have got opportunities that get stuck in the pipeline forever and don't go anywhere. And essentially they don't actually know if they're dead or alive. And I think that's quite important to investigate that, because often there is life in them still. We're looking at behaviour signals and how you could use them for your pipeline management strategy. I'll talk a little bit about follow-up, because I cannot do anything without talking about follow-up, because it's my thing. And then Grind has got a session all about adapting your communication to better suit prospect needs and sort of read behaviour signals and use that to be able to get more out of your conversations. So hopefully that sounds interesting enough. In terms of, so to start with, I wanted to talk to you about pain. I think pain is key for us to be able to move people on. And I'm going to talk about it from different angles, because it's really important to understand that. So we're starting with Daniel Kahneman, who said that there are two factors that affect buying behavior. One is the status quo bias. You may have heard of the status quo bias. So unless there is an urgency, unless somebody has such a problem that they need to change urgently, they will prefer, believe it or not, to stick to what they've got. However bad it is, if it's not bad enough, they prefer to stick to that. So really, to make them move forward, we've got to paint a picture in their mind and really, really make them see how bad what they've got is, if it is indeed bad. The other factor that we need to take into effect is the motivation to invest is often fueled by the fear of losing something rather than improving. So people are more afraid of losing or having a problem than they want to make things look excellent and better. And we often talk in these really positive terms of improved productivity, improved systems, et cetera, but that's not necessarily a big motivation for people. So I think that's an important one for people to remember. So in terms of essentially what it means is that if there's no pain, there's no gain, and that is true in most cases. And actually, I think I read somewhere that 70% of sales don't go anywhere because people just don't change. So that is the biggest thing you're up against when selling. Not the fact that the price is too expensive, not the fact that you're not shiny or nice enough. No, it's all about whether you manage to convince them that what they've got currently is a problem, a big enough a problem for them to go into the trouble of changing. And I think that's quite, it took me back when I read that, but it is something worth remembering. So because of that, I recommend looking at 4 key questions. So I think it's really important, have a think for a minute about your pipeline. Take a few opportunities on there. Do you know the answers to those questions? Do you know, A, what they've got in place at the moment? So John Smith, you sell IT services. Do you know for all of those ones on your pipeline, who they use for their IT currently, or what have they got in place, and what they'd like to have instead? And then a lot of salespeople then stop here, what they'd like to have instead, because we all like to talk about how wonderful it could be if we did it, because we have all these solutions and we could do it so much better. But I think before we do that, we need to find out why they don't actually have. Well, it's important to understand what they would like to have rather than what we would want them to have, because it's very easy to start selling immediately when someone tells you, oh yeah, you know, we've got Rob, we've got a lot of problems with absenteeism. You know, our security officers don't turn up often enough. You know, in that point, you could quite easily get going about how wonderful your ad hoc services are for covering absenteeism, and that's all good. But we don't actually know what they want instead, because they might say the next sentence might be, actually, we're moving our security in-house, which is a completely different solution. So that's quite important. But then if they do want that, why haven't they got it? What's the issue? Why don't they have it in place? And that is really important to understand if this is a dream or a necessity, because when you call and talk to people, they often like to just, you know, it's an opportunity for them to offload and to moan a little bit with someone who isn't, you know, they feel that they can do that. And so often people feel quite comfortable to complain, but it doesn't mean they're ever going to change. Some people just like to complain. There's quite a lot of people who like to complain. So, you know, are they actually interested in change or not? And to make the point really clear, there's the action coach formula for change. I've written down what the letters mean. Anybody knows what the letter mean? What the different letters stand for? If anybody wants to have a go?
I know.
Was that grind?
Yes, I know.
So
D for desire.
Sorry?
D for desire.
It could be. It could be desire. I've got it down as dissatisfaction, because I actually think that the dissatisfaction is stronger than desire. So, you know, the fact that they're unhappy with something, actually, it makes the point stronger. What the V stands for vision. So dissatisfying times vision plus what would the F be? First steps needs to be bigger than resistance. So that it can't just be dissatisfaction, because that's just them moaning. It can't just be vision, because that's vision not based on a real issue. So you've got to have that combination of problem with a vision of how you want it to actually look, plus some first steps. So some budget would help, or maybe they're going out to tender, or they've got a plan to go to tender, or they're buying new systems, or, you know, whatever it is, there's got to be some first steps in there. Otherwise, it doesn't mean it won't happen, but it's probably going to take a lot longer. And that all of that's got to be biggest than that resistance to change, which is so inherent in most of us, which we talked about with the status quo theory. So that, I think, you know, I do think that this formula for change, whilst it's difficult to remember the letters, I always have to write them down, I think it is a really good one to have written down and put on your wall when you make those pipeline calls, because really you need to do something quite drastic to move people forward, even if they've already told you that they've got a problem and they've already asked you for a quote. That does not mean they're going anywhere. And the amount of people that I talk to, that as soon as someone asks them for a quote, they just produce a quote, and that could take them weeks, but they don't actually qualify, they don't ask any questions. And then they end up with a lot of stuff on their pipeline that doesn't go anywhere, because surprisingly enough, they don't really want to change. So I would rather have less opportunities on my pipeline, but ones that I think there's an opportunity for me to sell to, rather than having lots and lots, which makes the follow-up less effective and quite difficult. Okay, so far? So in terms of pipeline strategy, that's just suggestions that can help make it easier for you to look at and manage. So always have a status attached to your pipeline. Make sure that you know what statuses you follow. So you start with, for example, with a with a lead, then you go to prospect, then you go to shopper, then you go to customer. Everyone has their own statuses, but make sure you have them and they use the same across the board. So if you've got a couple of people selling in your team, don't have one calling prospects this and customers is that. Make sure that those statuses are clear to everyone. Follow-up dates, really important. Even if it's for yourself, do make those, make sure that they're in there as actions for you. Notes, just write everything. I know it takes time, but you will not remember. I mean, I'm getting old, I'm 51. I don't remember what I did last week. I have to write a note for everything. And I would imagine some people might be in my position in here today. So just make sure you write notes. And also if other people share it, if you leave, if you're not well one day, make sure people can see it and they can follow it up. Some people use colors to visualize your pipeline to make it easier. So, green is really good ones and yellow is promising ones and red is really annoying ones. And the other thing to look at is tags for their buying status. So if you think that they're buying, but it's a long process because there are no steps taken at the moment and it's more of a vision that, there is a problem there, but it's not an urgent one, then maybe you have a tag for long term. Because I love long-term ones. We keep in touch with people for years, and we do sell to people. There's a number of people that we've been talking to for 2, 3, 4 years, and in the end, we do start working together. So it's not a waste of time. It's just you are aware of it, and you can make everyone aware, and it helps your forecasting. And I also think that if it's really important to spend time, reviewing and updating the pipeline. I do it weekly. If you can't do it weekly, at least do it monthly. Don't just leave it and leave it and leave it and leave it. Eat the frog. And then just some suggestions in terms of pain questions that you could ask people that we talked about being so important. So asking about challenges, what's the challenges? We've actually put this question on all of our review slides that we do with clients. Some of you may have seen it if you're clients of YBDT here, that we do put it on the last slide and we do ask the question, what challenges are you currently facing? But here, this is more to use with people who are not your clients yet. So what are your challenges? How's it impacting your business? You want to build this pain vision in their head, show them, help them demonstrate to themselves that this can't go on. How's this problem affecting you? So if they're the operational manager or they're the sales manager or they're the MD, they need to feel the pain personally. If someone else is dealing with it for them, then maybe it's not such a big deal, but they need to kind of tell you how bad it is for them. What are you doing to solve it? That will help you with the vision and the first steps. Are they actually doing anything about it, or are they just sitting there and moaning because company won't spend the money? And then my favorite one is what's it costing you doing nothing? Because again, that's something that people don't necessarily want to think about. And the problem with pain question is they do make us feel a bit uncomfortable, because as humans, we like to keep positive and bouncy. We like to talk about good things and solutions rather than problems. But I think to be able to sell and to be able to really look at your pipeline and come out with it knowing what opportunities you've got that are turning into work this month, what's turning into work this quarter, what's long term, and what's absolute rubbish, dead horse that needs to be deleted. You need to be asking these questions because otherwise you just won't know. So even if it makes you twitch a little bit, that's fine. That's a good sign. Okay. And then building a follow-up system. This is something that I've spoken about before in various places, but you cannot talk about it enough. I think I tend to look at a follow-up system, a 3-stage follow-up system, and each one, it has to have a goal. So you always have to have a goal in place to know what you're actually trying to take out of the meeting today. So follow-up can be, a lot of people feel uncomfortable following up. They think they're annoying people. They don't. We know from research that people actually like it when you follow up. I mean, I'm looking for a direct debit provider at the moment. I've approached 4 companies. None of them had called me at all, let alone follow up. So I do think people do like it. They feel that you're interested in their business and you want to know, and you can't wait to start working with them. So it's a positive, but to make it feel more, comfortable and to work better, you need to attach a goal to it. What are you trying to find out today? You need to break it down further. So, just have a goal for each time you call and move in baby steps. Keep patience. Don't worry. If it's not moving very fast, as long as you're keeping in touch, you're talking to people and you're ticking your little goals, that's a good thing. So follow-up funnel, initial follow-up is within 48 hours of sending them whatever they've asked for, a proposal or more information. Make sure they've had that. See if there's anything that they've seen that they initially don't like, or something that they really like, or where it stands, etc. And always book a time to speak to them again, because if you have time to speak to them again, that feels so much more comfortable. You can call and say, remember me, we spoke last month, you said to call you again at this and this time, so I'm calling today to make sure that that we can carry on talking about the proposal. So that's your first stage. Your second stage is really one where you're trying to get feedback on where they are with the proposal. So that will probably take place 2 weeks, maybe a week after they've had the proposal. I try to book that in, as I said, so I try to book a specific time for us to actually talk about it properly. It doesn't always work. Some people don't want to do that, so that's fine. You call them and just say, have you looked at the proposal? Are there key concerns? Who else is involved, for you to be able to make a decision? And once again, agree when to speak again. They may well not be at the position to give you a decision at this stage, but they can give you an indication, little things you can learn from. For example, if they haven't looked at the proposal, that is alarm bells going in your head. Why haven't you looked at it? What's wrong? So they might say, look, we've lost a big client and we've been running around like headless chickens because of that. Fair enough. Make a note and find out when is next best to talk about this. They might say, look, it stopped because we haven't got planning permission, or we haven't actually been able to go to tender yet. Whatever the reason is, it's really important that you understand why they haven't looked at your proposal. If they have looked at it, what are their key concerns? What are the other things that that they want that aren't there? Can you do anything else at this stage? And try and get an understanding of who else is in the loop. If you're speaking to the project manager, who's their boss, who else is looking at it, when are they looking at it? All of these things would really, really help you understand when the decision might happen and who else is involved and what are your chances. So this is all really helping shape in your head the outcome of this. And I think that it's, if you can avoid a project being stuck at this stage and move decision quicker, it's different for each industry, then you're probably better off. So anything that you can do at this stage to try and move this on before they involve other people, or this gets stuck in endless committees, or whatever it is that you can do to really try and get a fast decision, those questions could help. And then the final one, or the third one, is really, again, understand where they are in the process, who else is involved in it, what is going on with the decision. Okay, so you'd hope this is, say, a month after you first spoke to them, or 2 months. You'd hope that they've looked at the proposal now. So and there's been some initial discussions. So the next thing is, what needs to happen for a decision to happen. And from this stage, I would try and book a more formal meeting, perhaps with just you and other people from your business and the decision-making group in their business, if that's possible. Or, just to try and sort of move it to, we talked about baby steps, potentially sort of a meeting of review at this stage might help move things on. So a face-to-face or a Zoom. So if it's applicable to go and do a site visit at this stage, well, could we just come and see the site? Or if it's not applicable for other services, can we just book a Zoom or a team meeting to discuss and see what else we can do and see what your thought process is? you know, try and really move things on, even if it's a little step, not a decision, just a little step, but always try and do that and understand when you can next speak to them. And then there's, you know, with a lot of people, a lot of decisions just aren't being made. So you've got a continual follow-up sort of funnel, and always, you know, you need to understand. So if somebody's been on your pipeline for more than a couple of months and you haven't been able to move it anywhere, what you want to understand is, should you keep going or take them off the pipeline? What I find is I say to people on my email or my phone, I say, look, if it's not relevant anymore and you're not interested, just tell me and I'll take you off the pipeline and you will never hear from me again. It's not a problem. I'm just trying to understand where we are. And you'll be absolutely amazed by how many people turn around and go, oh, no, don't take us off. Please keep in touch, just because they haven't really made a decision and you just want to prove that. But sometimes you just got to be a bit hard hitting with people to get that out of them. And it is time to ask difficult questions, and do ask those questions and really try to understand where you are. Because as I said, you're better off with 5 good opportunities than 100 rubbish ones. You really are, because it's easier to manage a smaller pipeline that you know all the ins and outs of. So don't be afraid to annihilate your pipeline. And that is my message today. Don't be afraid to annihilate your pipeline. And I am, unless there's any urgent questions anyone's got, I'm going to pass on to Geraint to talk to us about buyer's journey.
Fab. Thank you. Shall I just say next slide then? Is that easier?
Can.
Cool. Okay. So next slide, please. So really, so what I'm going to talk to you about is what to look for. So how to identify their behavior, so that can actually look at what the opportunities are and how they are. So you can really determine, I suppose, that status. So you can see what you're going for. So you'll have to excuse me because of COVID. I'm getting COVID brain. So I might just forget the odd word, so I apologise. And I've got a bit of a tickly cough. And then once you've got that, how you can then use that to actually look at the communication that you use so that you speak to individuals. Lovely. And next slide, please. Yaff. Okay. So first of all, it's looking at how do we identify who the buyer is. Now, one of the biggest things for us at Action Coach is about testing and measuring. So we always look at, you know, what is the data? What have you got? And I know, you know, data isn't necessarily the most sexy thing. It's not the most exciting thing, but data is logic. And it's better than to actually have something to say, yes, this is what I've got. This is the data, rather than going, well, I think it's this. I think these are my buyers. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, let's just go with it anyway. Actually, why would you do that? You know, really think about who is your buyer. So, you know, what could you use currently? You know, question to you all really, what would you use currently to test and measure what the data is to see who your buyer is? So what would you say is your current test and measure for the data of who your customer profiles are, who your buyers might be? That's a question, by the way, not just a rhetorical. So someone come off mute. Come on, play with me, as it were, Carolyn. What could you use? Rob, you've come off mute. Come on.
Yeah, because it looks like there's only one of us talking. So.
Well, I know. There you go. Great. Well done.
So you can pay me later. Yes, it's all good. So I suppose if I were looking at raw data and there was a contact name on it, within my field of vision for my industry, I would look at their job title as a good indicator as to whether or not they either procure, manage, or influence.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be my first approach. And if it was somebody that said like MD on a large business, I'd be going, that's not my right contact.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, good. Absolutely. Do you know what? There's an easier way, actually, Rob. There's an easier way, which is looking at your previous sales. because you can, so if you think about all of the different types of people that have bought from you, so ask yourself, who has spent the most money? What industry are they in? Who's bought more than one product? And who was the easiest to work with? Which client had the shortest sales cycle? Now, for most companies, 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the clients. Okay, so really, if you think about who your ideal customer is, so that ideal customer profile, okay, the whole point of it is that it should enable you and your sales team, your salespeople, to identify a really good prospect really quickly. So, and I think that it also should allow anyone, again, in your teams to be able to describe your customer really quickly and in such a way that you can find ideal customers. Okay. And then I think once you've done that, and obviously you've talked about, your feet talked about pain points, but this is the same point now. So you've created that, your pipeline, but actually this is almost like a step back a little bit, because it's linking about, well, who are those people that are we looking for my pipeline? And then think about, so I've got my ideal customer profile. Talking about customer profiles, we did this or I've certainly done it recently for our BNI. So we're looking at who our ideal customer profile is. And so asking yourself these questions that I asked you before, who has spent the most money in the past? What industry are they in? Who brought more than one product? So all of these, this creates an ideal customer profile. And then once you've got that, you should be able to describe that really quickly in such a way that other people can find those quickly. Then you think about their pain points, and how do you then go about solving them? So if you really think about, it's obviously you want to ask them what their pain points are, but at the same time, you really want to know what those pain points are. So by asking yourself what their pain points might be. So yes, you're assuming, but at the same time, if you don't assume, you won't know. So again, you can use the data. What were the pain points of your previous customers? Because actually, they are going to be very similar. So if you've got similar customer profiles, they're going to have similar customer pain points. And then you've got that whole sort of thing about, well, once you've created that pain points and you create a solution for them, you've then got you've got a little bit of a customer matrix for them. Okay. Next slide, please. Yeah. Once you've got that, then you can start looking at creating their buyer's journey. And what is their buyer's journey? And I think really it's that whole point, thinking about, well, once you've got that information, you can start looking at where you need to get to. So a bit like having sat nav. Okay. So what do you think might be involved in creating a buyer's map? What questions do you need to ask? One of the first things you might want to think about is who's involved. So how many people are involved in that buying process? Now, according to Harvard Business Review, the number of people that are involved in the decision-making process has gone up from 5.4 2 years ago. I don't know who the 0.4 is. 5.4 2 years ago to 6.8 today. So 6.8 people are involved in that decision-making process in a business. So if you're selling to B2B, so it's actually a business. Obviously, if you're selling B2C, if you're selling to the consumer, that's obviously very different. But if you're selling to business, then actually there are now more people involved than there were 2 years ago. And you've got to think about who might be involved. So again, Rob, you were talking about the managing director. Well, maybe depending on how small or big that business is, maybe they get involved. So it might not be their initial decision. It might come down to, depending on where it is, it might be a training budget, or it might be, so for example, from a coaching perspective, it will be a training budget. But actually the people who are in training might not actually have the budget. It might actually have to go to the financial operations or the chief financial operator. So finding out how many people are involved, and actually what are their, I suppose, what's the stakeholder, and what are their pain points, and how can you help that? So again, it's that, I suppose, there are 4 points. There's awareness, you know, how can you articulate their pain? Consideration, you know, what and where of what their vetting process might be. The decision, how and why they might select you, you know, or a competitor when interviewing those lost leads. And then retention, how do you stay connected after that sale? Next slide, please. Yeah. So follow the map. So this sat nav, and this really means you need to start delving into how the potential customer will journey from not being aware of your company products to them being a customer. So generally, this journey follows a process. Okay, so they have a problem, they seek out solutions, they shortlist, excuse me, potential solutions through research, and then this shortlist is whittled down to 2 or 3 solution providers, and then a purchase decision's made. Okay. And then from a business perspective, the buyer's journey is a funnel. So again, you know, Yafit was talking about a funnel from us, but also there is a funnel from a prospect's perspective, and each of those stages is the engagement that you have to have with those levels or those areas of the funnel has to be different, or actually has to have different types of content. So I'm going to talk to you about, and this is where it's saying now, okay, so you've identified who the customer is, you've got your pipeline, you've got your customer, now you're thinking about their buyer's journey. Now let's think about how we communicate with them. So next slide, please. Yeah. So I know there's quite a lot on here, but it sort of, you know, so the content types are the types of touch points that you're going to use with either your prospects, leads, and customers, okay, and how they are going to interact with your brand. And that content should be tailored to different platforms and the different delivery methods, excuse me, and then obviously different people and segments. So this all types it, for example, blogs, posts, videos, ebooks, blah blah blah. You can read them on that. I don't need to read them all. Okay. And it's about, you know, different types of content. It can be nurturing and informative. It doesn't have to be pushy or salesy. And again, I think the funnel is there to show that you are communicating with each of these levels differently because of where they are in the funnel. So if you think, if we turn it up on its head, so customers, you know, they already know your products and services because they've bought from you before. So they're generally, hopefully, happy. So you ask them and you give them opportunities to give you referrals. So they're going to have something very different to someone who's a prospect. So and leads are still in that area where they are evaluating you. So you want to offer them something that will help them make a decision. Again, think about what Yafit was saying before about D times V plus F equal, it has to be greater than R. So, you know, dissatisfaction times vision, but you've got to bring up their dissatisfaction level and show them what the vision is with you involved. Okay. And the fact that you can help them, that's you are the first steps in changing their lives. Okay, which will lower their resistance. Excuse me. So if you can make that, you can give them that content that will help them make that decision. You are lowering their resistance and bringing up that vision. Okay, and then obviously with prospect, it's about awareness. So it's the awareness phase. You're still there. So if you're, you know, a nurturing newsletter might be perfect for them at this point. Okay, monthly communication that's informative and relevant to their business or to their lifestyle it might be the only touch that they need right now. Okay, so for example, you know, they might attend a free seminar, and then they might then lead to that being in the leads area in the funnel. And I think one of the things, just a really quickie on content type. So according to Google, 7 in 10 business to business, so B2B buyers, watch a video sometime during their buying process. So video is no longer a nice to have. Okay, so according to Google, it's 50% of internet users look for videos related to a product or service before they visit a store. And then furthermore, 55% of consumers say they'll pay more attention to a video than any other medium. Okay, so video is really important. So if you're not using video, think about how you can. And again, if you look at, just go on LinkedIn nowadays and look how many people are interacting with video. And it doesn't actually, again, it doesn't have to be pushy or salesy. It could be interactive. It could be about them. It could be about the company. But video really helps. Next slide, please. Yeah. So move on to content marketing. And again, I know, so what we can do, I don't know if, yeah, but we can always make sure we can share these slides. So we talk about, you know, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel. So tofu, mofu, bofu, and bufu. Excuse me. So top of the funnel. So it's that discovery. So really thinking about, you know, offering the appropriate content type for the audience. So you obviously can see there blogs, social media posts, videos, etc., etc. So as you go down that funnel, as I said before, you know, once they've got to that point where they're converted or they're retained, you don't need to sell necessarily. So they're already customers. You want to retain them. So it could be the fact that, you know, when they get down to that retention level, it could be discounts to events, or maybe a free social ticket for something for you to bring them along. Again, if you really think about where you know the content for a second, think about how video can be really important to your prospects. Okay, because it's telling them what you do, but again, it's they can always go back to it. Oh, excuse me. And next slide, please. And then finally, for me, I think we talk about the 5 E's of content marketing. And obviously each level of that funnel has to be enticed to as your feet were saying, to move them forward. So, you know, each step, so entertain, educate, enchant, enroll, and enlist. At each stage, make sure that content matches the strategy. So where you've got that brand awareness is all about, you know, what your contacts can see. So again, videos, social media posts. So again, it's what they can actually see. Then lead generation, brand engagement. It's where you can start educating and teaching your audience. So so rather than just that entertaining and drawing them in, it's actually where they start engaging with your brand and what you do. Then lead generation, you know, really give them information that shows you what differentiates you from other prospective solution providers. Then they're obviously enrolling, that customer acquisition. So they're going to be a client and they've bought something from you. So what do you do with them now? You know, do you upgrade them to a membership, or get them onto a loyalty program by having them attend events that you're running, etc. And then that customer loyalty, the care, showing them that you care. You know, giving them care packages on their birthdays, anniversaries. Last time I spoke about critical non-essentials. So they're critical, but they're non-essential. They're critical for that relationship development. So, you know, special days for them, unless they're helpful referrals. So I think, you know, the 5 E's really allow you to concentrate on specific emotions you want to trigger in your prospects. And matching obviously content type with each of these levels is critical for your marketing strategies to be successful. And I think really, again, going back to, you know, dissatisfaction times vision plus first steps, that dissatisfaction is emotion. So again, on each of these levels, you're trying to bring up that emotion. So although, you know, although the language of business is logic, we buy with emotion. Okay, so we need that emotion, that trigger, to actually get us involved and to entice us in. So I think, you know, from what you can see here is that you can fully understand, once you can fully understand who your buyer is, you need to look at who's bought from you in the past. and then to create that ideal customer profile. Look at what their potential pain points are and how you're going to solve this pain. Again, looking at the D times V. From here, you can then obviously come up with that buyer's journey. And for each buyer and for each stage of their journey, you can work out what type of communication you need that will work to increase their chances of not only becoming a customer, but also becoming a raving fan who returns again and again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Geraint. That's lovely. Raving fan and connection to our latest webinar before. You can watch the video on our website if you want. Those were the two kind of sessions from myself and from Geraint. Is there any questions from anyone? Anything that you wrote down you wanted to find out more about? We've got a bit of time, so if there's any questions, that would be great.
I've got a quick question.
Go on.
In terms of the pipeline, is there a CRM, or would you suggest using a CRM to manage that?
Not necessarily. I mean, yes, I suggest a CRM, or we use a CRM, and I think that it's useful to have, and it helps manage, the pipeline, etc. You can create activities, etc. on it, reminders, and obviously it's better. It's easier to manage properly in comparison to a spreadsheet, but it depends on the size of your business, and you can actually manage well, I've managed my lead generation for years. Don't tell anyone, but I did manage it with a spreadsheet for years. So you don't necessarily have to have a CRM. And I don't really, people ask me a lot about recommending a CRM, and I think there's so many out there that it's really hard to do that. So I just I think that you need to sort of look at the different ones and see what it is that you want, what's important to your company, and then try and potentially get some help with somebody who understands the different systems and might be able to help you with that in terms of sort of IT functioning, etc. Geraint, have you got anything to add?
I was going to say that there are quite a few that are free, so you could always try some out first before actually buying. And I know we use, so at Action Coach Bristol, we use a free version of a CRM that has been really useful, and we haven't had to buy we haven't had to pay for it at all. So we still use the free version. I won't because there are others available, but can always let you know what they are, Angela.
Thank you.
Any more questions from anyone? Any feedback? Anything? Rob, you've come off mute. Is that because you have a question?
Yeah, no, it was good. No, it was interesting. Thank you. Yeah, no questions.
Excellent. That's Rob Lewis. I was talking about Rob Riffing.
All right.
No, it's for me, it's always the challenge of trying to interpret these processes into the unique industries that we're all in. So what works in one place, it's understanding, particularly if you're buying a product, maybe rather than a service, it's making sure you get the right understanding of the pipeline and how you interact. Once you've got them on the pipeline, the sort of suggestions you put forward for communicating, I found very helpful. So if I can get the slideshow, that would be quite useful. Just can't write it all down very quickly, but it's good to see and take away that knowledge. Like I say, it's just interpretation into specific industries, just to capture.
Okay, great, thank you. That's great feedback, and we obviously recorded this, and we're going to turn it into a video which we will send to everyone. So
I should have put my posh voice on
it. Indeed. So you could sort of watch it again, or just watch the bits that you want. But if you wanted the presentation as well, just let me know, and I can send that as well.
Yeah.
So just quickly to tell you what's happening next. So we have another launch webinar coming up in September, on the 20th of September, same time, same place. I'll obviously send you an email to invite you, etc. We actually been really organized, and we know what the topic is. We're going to be covering ways of ensuring that your marketing support your sales. So, that is the biggest question I think that a lot of businesses have, is how do you make marketing actually work in a way that is tangible? How can it support the sales operation? So we're trying to cover that. And for that, we've got Jade Tambini, who's a B2B marketing consultant. He's coming to be our guest speaker. So we're giving Geraint a bit of a holiday in September. He will be coming back, Geraint, won't you?
Yes, I will.
But not in September. So, so it's quite an interesting topic, I think, quite a challenging one. You're very welcome to obviously attend. But if you need anything else in the meantime, any questions about sales enablement or any, pipeline follow-up, indeed, anything to do with buyer signals or the market or making, I think what the points Geraint was making about marketing and making sure that it fits with the different stages, I thought that was invaluable. I really enjoyed that. So, any questions about that, just get in touch with myself or Geraint. And I think that's everything. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank
Have a
you.
good rest of the week and rest of the day.
Yeah.
See you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.